Welcome to
What's up, gang?
H3 podcast.
Yeah.
What were you holding up during that transition? Looked like you had like a belt or something, cutie.
Huh?
Looked like you were holding a belt.
Oh, when I was doing this,
Yeah.
I was pointing down to you because you were below me, and I was putting an L because your camera's not on.
Oh, you got to deal with my smooth, savory
Wow.
voice.
Wow.
You know, that's right. We're on Twitch and we're also on Twitter, now known as X, on YouTube.
Oh, cool.
And if you follow the little scrolly thing we got here with our advanced technology, you got to smash that like button and hit that bell if you want to see Ethan Khan be a Zionist.
I didn't realize the Twitch was.
What, brother? We've been.
I didn't know we were streaming the podcast on Twitch, though. I knew you guys were playing.
Typical
games.
communists, not on the same page, which is actually pretty much what we kind of want to talk about.
The subject,
because we've been seeing a lot of goofiness, especially on TikTok and Twitter, in online left communist spaces, where people are getting really bogged down with particular definitions, especially when it comes to imperialism, state capitalism, who is imperialist, who was imperialist, who is and wasn't. And it's pretty much a cavalcade of nonsense. So Comrade Cutie Pie is finally getting his wish.
I was gonna say, that's a good word.
Mm-hmm. I have good words. I can't just read very well. But Comrade Cutie Pie is finally getting his wish where he can talk about the main man, the legend himself, Bukharin. I know he's been pretty hyped up about this pretty much since we started. If you look in his eyes right now, you could see the excitement that's growing in him, the fire.
This has been
Under the mask, I'm smiling.
Almost
smiling
a year in
right
the
now.
making to give Cutie a Bukharin episode.
You do have a cute
Usually,
smile.
I'm looking in the camera with dead eyes, but right now they're lit up.
Dead eyes, dead air. All right, so let's see what we got here. Anyways, sorry, I was clearing my little dirty throat. So, Cutie, who is Bukharin? Who was Bukharin, and why do you think he would be really important to this discussion? And I should include, actually, before you start answering, a lot of this episode is basically a build-up to sort of readdress our takes on China. I know we did an episode called China's Gucci store or something like that. It'd be interesting to see how that aged. But basically, we want to take this theory from Bukharin and see how it applies to modern day, particularly with the inner imperialist powers, possibly China. Spoiler alert, I won't say which way, I'm feeling. But anyway, Cutie, take it away. Who is Bukharin? Who was Bukharin?
Bukharin was he was a Bolshevik. He was a prominent Bolshevik. He was Lenin described him as like basically the most important theorist in the party before he died. He was primarily an economic theorist, so he didn't really do a whole lot with social issues or stuff like that. I mean, he did to a certain extent, but most of what he was talking about was like really, really exhaustingly boring talks about economics, supply and demand theory, all sorts of bullshit like that. Damn, bro, you messaged me and my eyes went down there. You sidetracked me, dog.
My fault. I didn't know you had Discord open.
I went like this. I was like, but Bukharin was an economic theorist of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and he was a prominent Bolshevik. He did get offed by Stalin, and there's a whole thing about that, but it doesn't necessarily matter for this discussion. Whether he was actually a terrorist or not, we don't know.
As Larry would say, he got what he deserved, but
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Can't do anything about it now.
But it's more the theory that's important in this circumstance, especially
Give me a
since
second.
when we're talking about China. A lot of Deng Xiaoping's theories don't necessarily come from Bukharin, but there's a lot of similarity there. And there is a distinction between the two at the end of the day. And we are going to be, I think, reading about a couple of things from Deng. I'm trying to find some to compare and contrast for the next podcast.
Baller. Yeah, a two-parter. We haven't done one of those in a long time. But yeah, so basically we're just going to go over this theory and discuss. There's a comment I wanted to bring up here real quick. Can you hurry on addressing his TikTok is being insufferable about China discussion, lame-o? Honestly, you guys have been fucking ridiculous. Like, one way or another. Either you motherfuckers are saying China's evil and must be destroyed, and other motherfuckers are like, China is holy as Muhammad and can do no wrong. And I'm like, brothers, nuance, please.
Xi Jinping, peace be upon him.
Yeah,
there's at least so much to it.
And then you see goofy people with like the name like was it like red like G or something like that, and I'm like, or like Gist, and I'm like, bro, get out of here.
Yeah.
No, we know who it is. I'm just being annoying. All right, so let's pull up our first article. Also, stick around to the end for the answer to the question of the week. We have a video to show you guys. We're only not going to show the whole thing of it because it's like 10 minutes, but the link will be in the description. Go ahead and like it after this podcast and give the homie some love because they're shadow banned apparently. All right, so let me pull this up. And as punishment, Cruz, like I said, because I am dyslexic and Cutie can't see, you are the reader.
I don't know about you, but I'm a communist that enjoys reading.
I enjoy listening to a robot reading it to me.
Yeah. I'm going to need that cleared up though.
All right, let me.
Like that's too tiny. That's too tiny.
Is that better?
It's not big enough. We gotta make it
a little bigger.
Gotta make it larger.
All right.
All right.
We like things large in this house.
I think I can read that. All right. Are we ready? Everyone buckle up, sit down, grab your tea, and let's begin. Chapter 1, World Economy Defined. The struggle between national states, which is nothing but the struggle between the respective groups of the bourgeoisie, is not suspended in the air. One cannot picture this gigantic conflict as the conflict of two bodies in a vacuum. On the contrary, the very conflict is conditioned by the special medium in which the national economic organisms live and grow. The latter, however, have long ceased to being a secluded whole, an isolated economy. I'm not reading that part. On the contrary, they are only parts of a much larger sphere, namely world economy, just as every individual enterprise is part of the national economy. So every one of these national economies is included in the system of the world economy. This is why the struggle between modern national economic bodies must be regarded first of all as the struggle of various competing parts of world economy, just as we consider the struggle of individual enterprises to be one of the phenomena of socio-economic life. Thus, the problem of studying imperialism, its economic characteristics, and its future reduces itself to the problem of analyzing the tendencies in the development of the world economy and of the probable changes in its inner structure. Before we approach this problem, however, we must, first of all, agree that we understand by the expression world economy.
So before you go on, Cutie, would you like us to read the whole thing and then discuss, or go paragraph by paragraph?
I think paragraph by paragraph is fine. This will probably take about 15 minutes if it was uninterrupted reading for this first section. I just want to point that out to everybody. So I think paragraph by paragraph would probably work. But yeah, I think that this part is pretty, self-explanatory. This first section, there's not really a whole lot to do a deeper analysis.
Yeah.
What is the world economy? It's a bunch of economies colliding together on the planet of Earth.
So I think
it's
for the babies,
their integration.
Right. Just for the babies, either here or in the future, whenever. I just want to point out the particular part in the beginning when he says, which is nothing but the struggle between the respective groups of the bourgeois is not suspended in the air. This goes back to basic materialism. Nothing exists in a vacuum. States, economies, resources, trade don't just exist in the ether. They exist for a preceding reason. So that's basically what he's saying. So go ahead, Bruce.
Okay. Whoa. The basis of social life is fucking me up. The basis of social life is the production of material goods. In modern society, which produces not products as such, but commodities, i.e., products destined for exchange, the process of the exchange of various products expresses the division of labor between the economic units that produce those commodities. Such division of labor, in contradistinction, to the division of labor within the framework of a single enterprise, is termed by Marx the social division of labor. Social division of labor can obviously assume various forms. There may be, for instance, division of labor between various enterprises within a country, or there may be division of labor between various branches of production. There may also be division of labor between such large subdivisions of the entire economic life as, for instance, industry and agriculture. And there may be division of labor between countries that represent separate economic systems inside of the general system, etc. It is possible to... I didn't know if you want me to read that little section afterwards, or because it's so short.
I look like Cutie was going to say something, but
yeah,
maybe
that's why I stopped.
Yeah.
No, because I leaned forward. Because I was like...
You leaned forward and I heard a noise?
I was like... I mean the whole section, I do actually really like this analysis of he puts throughout this whole thing, he puts a somewhat of a distinction between what he refers to as the town and the country as kind of like just concepts, and how the more industrialized the country becomes, the more town-like it becomes, right? And some countries that have raw materials that don't necessarily have their own domestic capitalist class, they mostly have landlords. They effectively become the country of imperialist powers. You know what I mean? Where they are places to have the raw materials extracted from to go to the town, which is, the imperialist nation.
Yeah.
But I like the separation, I guess, between town and country, in the sense that it's referring to the difference between industry and agriculture, and how without the base from getting raw materials, it could be cotton, it could be cobalt, it could be all sorts of things that are not produced in a factory. They're all required to be put into the factory to get a product. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the country isn't necessarily dependent on the town, but the town is dependent on the resources that the country provides. You know what I mean?
Right. All right.
Okay.
Take it away, Cruz.
It is possible to propose various divisions to advance more than one basis for the classification of economic forms, depending upon the aims pursued by the investigation. What is important for us in this connection is the fact that alongside of other forms of social division of labor, there exists a division of labor between national economies, between various countries, a division of labor which oversteps the boundaries of the national economy, an international division of labor, which is what Cutie was just talking about. I lost my spot. There exists two kinds of prerequisites for an international division of labor. natural prerequisites conditioned by the differences of the natural medium in which the various production organisms live, and prerequisites of a social nature conditioned by differences in the cultural level, the economic structure, and development of productive forces in the various countries. Let us start with the former. Different communities discover in their natural environment different means for production and subsistence. Consequently, their methods of production, modes of life, and products are different. It is owing to the existence of these spontaneously developed differences that when communities come into contact, there occurs an exchange of their several products one for another, so that these products gradually become transformed into commodities. Exchange does not create the difference between the spheres of production. It brings the differing spheres of production into relation with one another, and thus transforms them into more or less interdependent branches of social collective production.
So I just want to touch on real quick when it comes to like the science of human development, from pure animals to the humans that we understand today. Like human beings as animals don't settle or haven't settled in places that they couldn't live. As like that sounds like obvious, right? But even extremely harsh environments like tundra environments and whatnot, like I'll use the tundra as an example. Like humans find the means of their subsistence. So like indigenous people who live in the very far northern regions of the planet, let's say you have a group of people and they harvest seals, like that's their main resource for blubber, the fur, I don't know if they have claws, you know what I'm trying to say, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
As they begin to use those materials for themselves, and let's say in this example they encounter groups from farther south who are like, oh well, we can give you guys some cool new seal killing tools because we like mine ore or whatever, and we'll take your cool coats. That in itself doesn't make these two groups different. It's that these two groups interacting with each other now are becoming interdependent on each other, sort of making this proto version of what we know as trade today.
Yeah, and that doesn't make the people selling, harpoons of a higher quality to these people imperialists. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just
Right.
That's what they have to offer in exchange for the thing they want.
Yeah,
And
it might
that's
be
base
an
level.
unequal exchange if one has access to a market that another doesn't, if you know what I mean. But it doesn't necessarily make it imperialist. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
right.
Those social relations haven't developed yet by this point.
Mhm.
Now, at some point down the line, especially as social conditions, cultures, and the productive forces change, then in the scenario that you're using, the ones that are harvesting the seals versus the ones creating the tools to harvest the seals, the ones that are creating the harpoons would be more likely to be the ones to develop into a more imperialistic economy. They would be the town, the seals would be the country.
It's just the fact that you're so serious about harvesting seals
Yeah.
is killing me. But
the seal harvesting trade.
Hey, look, that's what you started, okay? So that's
I know, but I didn't think I cooked that hard.
Maybe
until
think
you guys
of a
started
different
talking.
example.
I'm sorry, but
Tomatoes. How about tomatoes?
You did this to us, Ivan. You did this.
Don't start what you can't finish.
we gotta industrialize the seal killing. But anyway, right, exactly. The very nature of these two groups of people trading, seal material for harpoons isn't in itself imperialist, and it isn't itself exploitation. As Cruz said, those social relations haven't been developed yet. In a much broader future hypothetical sense, if now the harpoon sellers were able to destabilize the government of the seal harvesters and now have all the seal material go to the harpoon makers without having the harpoon makers give the seal people what they need, that would be imperialism. But you understand what I'm saying. All right, keep going.
Yeah, if the harpoon makers trust.
Eventually, they'll just be like, "What if we What if we controlled the seals?
Well,
Human
yeah, I
hot
mean,
dog.
part of it would be
Mhm.
part of the process of imperialization and monopolization is that, you know, these guys in the town that are now manufacturing the harpoons, right? They would they would have the option that, you know, obviously, you know, we hear about this in like US history class with like the Rockefellers, right? Where in this circumstance they could either use the profits that they're making from selling these harpoons and buy up all the other harpoon making factories, right?
Mhm.
Or what they could do is they could, and obviously they would do this by getting, you know, extra money from a group of other capitalists through some sort of banking scenario, right? And they would use that money to basically purchase other harpoon manufacturers, or they would do this to purchase the mine where they get the iron, or, you know, where whatever for their harpoons. And maybe they would create a steel plant and then increase the you know, the quality of their harpoons. And they would also purchase, you know, the group, I guess, the firm, the enterprise that is actually hunting the seals and,
Yeah.
you know, getting the blubber. So now they would have monopolized the entire process. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or it could be the other way around. Maybe the seal people buy the fucking manufacturer. I don't know.
The
But
seal
it's
people become so powerful.
usually
because
it's the
how many seals they
manufacturer.
have. They just
That's
have
when you
so
get a
many
seal empire.
seals, and then the seal
But that
people
that
go
would
on
be
strike.
the, you know, that would be the, you know, the creation of an imperialist relationship.
Right.
This clip is gonna go crazy when our ops are like, all they do is talk about seals. But
I can't. You got to title the episode. You
They
gotta be
hate
like,
seals!
seal killing based, and
Seal murder part 1.
that'd be a good clip.
Is seal murder imperialist?
Let's find
Is there a
out.
seal genocide
Like-
in China?
God. Okay, I'm moving on.
Next.
This
You went too
difference-
far, Ivan.
you ruined us. This difference in the spheres of production results here from the differences in the natural conditions of production. It is not difficult to find numerous illustrations for this assertion. Let us, for example, take the vegetable kingdom. See, Ivan, you didn't have to kill seals. You could have done vegetables.
I like how at the bottom it says seal empire. It's just scrolling.
Mhm.
Right. Coffee can be produced only under certain climatic conditions. It is grown mainly in Brazil, partly in Central America, to a much lesser degree in Africa, Absentia, British Central Africa,
Abyssinia, that's Ethiopia.
Abyssinia. Oh, okay. I can't read.
Because this is so old, a lot of it is like he's saying shit,
Yeah.
and like unless you knew what it was called back then, you're like, what the fuck is he talking
Yeah.
about?
Where is
You know
this?
what I mean?
Okay, so that's Ethiopia. Germany, East Africa.
Yeah.
And in Asia, Dutch India, British India, Arabia, and Malacca. Cocoa can be produced only in tropical countries. Rubber, a product playing a very large part in modern production, also requires certain climatic conditions, and its production is limited to a few countries: Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Guyana, etc. Cotton, a product occupying the first rank among all fibrous plants due to its importance in economic life, is produced in the United States, India, Egypt, China, Asia Minor, and the Russian Central Asia territories, Jute, which takes the second place, is exported from one country only, namely from India. If we take the production of minerals, we find the same picture, since we deal here to a certain extent with what is known as the natural resources of a country. Coal, for instance, is exported from countries with large coal deposits: England, Germany, United States, Austria, etc. Kerosene is produced in countries having an abundance of oil: United States, the Caucasus, Holland, India, Romania, and Galicia. Iron ore is extracted in Spain, Sweden, France, Algeria, Newfoundland, Cuba, etc. Manganese ore is to be found mainly in the Caucasus and southern Russia, India, and Brazil. Copper deposits are in abundance mostly in Spain, Japan, British South Africa, German Southwest Africa, Austria, Canada, United States, Mexico, Chile, and Bolivia. I don't know why that paragraph in particular was so difficult for me.
Listen, man. He does this a lot, and it like I appreciate him for being so thorough. But throughout this whole thing, there's whole sections like later on in this where he's literally just naming every single German fucking bank, every single trust, every single one of them. And he's like, in here, they're daughter companies in parentheses. And it's just like, it doesn't matter. I mean, obviously it makes sense then when he's writing it to describe who the problem are. But like those companies like do not really exist today.
Right.
So
some of it gets lost in translation.
No.
I was making a
like
joke,
it doesn't matter.
I was making a joke to Cutie. I was like, he's basically GDF right now. He's a YouTuber essayist, and he's just like, these are the companies to support Israel: Boeing, Lockheed, Chevron, whatever. But anyway, so I'll give you a break.
Like 100 years from now, somebody would be watching GDF's video and be like, Israel doesn't exist, bro. It doesn't matter, and Boeing doesn't exist either. Like,
but that does give us plenty of examples that aren't seal killing and harpoons. It's, a natural resource exists one place. It can only exist in that place. And I think that's kind of the important thing that we skipped over with the seal empire is those seals can only exist in those countries. The coal only exists where coal is. And that's how these relations start developing. And
usually a factory's not going to get built on directly on top of a deposit of natural resources. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's usually the manufacturer is going to be in the city where they're not really mining any of that shit anyways, and it'll sprawl out from there.
And
but it's not going to be
of labor to help refine it and process it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Chris, I'll give you a little break. I'll read about another half.
Yeah, my throat's dry.
So you can finish it and then let me volunteer to read the next one. So, important as the natural differences in the conditions of production may be, they recede more and more into the background compared with differences that are the outcome of the uneven development of productive forces in various countries. It must be emphasized that natural conditions are only of relative importance as regards production relations, as well as commerce and transport, i.e., their negative or positive significance depends to a high degree upon the cultural level of man. Sorry, I had to burp. While natural conditions measured by the human yardstick of time and space, oh, I love that line, may be regarded as constant entities, the cultural level of man is a changing entity, and no matter how important the differences in the natural conditions of a country may be for production and transport, cultural differences are certainly as important, and only the combined action of both forces produce the phenomenon of economic life. Here's where he gets really cooking. Coal deposits, for instance, may be dead capital in the absence of technical economic prerequisites for their extraction. On the other hand, mountains formerly obstructing communications, swamps making production difficult, and the like lose their negative significance in a country with a highly developed technique of tunnels, irrigation works, etc. Still, important for us in the circumstances that the unequal development of productive forces create different economic types and different production spheres, thus increasing the scope of international social division of labor. We have in mind a difference between industrial countries importing agricultural products and exporting manufactured goods, and agrarian countries exporting the products of agriculture production and importing of products of industry. So before I let you yap about that, Cutie, because I know you really like that line. When I hear that, it makes me think of Michael Parenti. It also makes me think of like where my parents come from, Guatemala. Like in the West, we say Guatemala is a poor country, but as Michael Parenti said, there's really no such thing as poor countries. This goes back to the concept that I mentioned earlier when it comes to human development, where people don't settle in places that they don't have resources. Guatemala in particular has abundance of resources of cocoa, bananas, uranium, cobalt, all kinds of stuff that can make motherfuckers rich. But it's not the people, the proletariat, or in Guatemala's case, the peasantry, who gets access to those resources. It's the compradors, it's the imperialists who extract those resources away. But go ahead, Cutie.
Yeah. I was reading this and I literally went, God damn it! Like after I finished reading it the first time, because I was like, I've never had an original thought in my goddamn life.
I think I remember you doing that.
Because like it's really true, especially the part where he says dead capital in the absence of technical and economic prerequisites for their extraction. I think a lot of like the Congo in particular, and that they would not be mining cobalt or any of these other things in the Congo because they have no industry which uses those products or those raw materials.
That's what I was
The
thinking.
only reason why they're mining and extracting those resources is because there's an external market which wants those resources.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like when you read that line, the two things I immediately thought of were, if he was alive today and he was writing this, he'd probably be talking about cobalt, coltan, and lithium specifically because of those external markets. And then the other thing, just I thought about civilization, because it's like if you start your civilization, right, and you've got nothing but coal deposits in your area, it's really difficult to develop until you develop the technology to have anything to do with that coal. Otherwise, it's just tiles being taken up until either you discover the resources to extract it, or an external power discovers and realizes they need those resources and effectively takes you over, whether it be via economic reasonings or just straight up war.
Yeah. And like, I'll put it like this. This would be a very positive situation for developing the Congo if they had a stable government that was able to actually monitor the trade of this good, exchange. You know what I mean? But imperialist powers deliberately make the Congo not stable so they don't have to go through that process at all. They just have to, basically show up and collect their check. You know what I mean? Grab the resources that they need for their factories and go back home. You know what I mean?
And ultimately, part of that is because if the Congo was stable, the price of said resource would go up because they would have direct control over it. And then and the capitalists lose out. They lose out on their profits.
And he talks about this much later. He might talk about it in one of the second section that we're going to read on this, which is further towards the end. I think it's chapter 9. He talks about how, holy shit, it left me. It just like ran away, bro. It just like, did you see how it like left my brain?
It left your soul.
Give me a moment. Holy moly, that's crazy. That hurts my soul.
I'm currently being imperialized because I just realized I paid for my car note twice.
Oh, well.
Well, I gotta hit them up and be like, "Can I just not pay next month then, or give me my money back?"
They're gonna tell you to pay again. Oh, don't worry, it just takes a month off at the end.
No,
that's what they're gonna tell you.
God damn it! I knew I should have fucked with it. Anyway,
it might come back to me.
The bourgeois must be destroyed. All right, so let's.
I'll just interrupt you in the middle of speaking, maybe. I'll just be like, stop!
The foundation of highly developed divisions of labor that are brought about by the exchange of commodities is the cleavage between town and country. We may say that the whole economic history of society is summarized in the development of this cleavage.
I was like, we're fucking 10.
Bro, I said it and I was like, I'm so disappointed in myself. I was like, I can't believe I was sitting there.
I was like, don't be a
Lumpy, get these boys in order. You're laughing about boobies.
Please scold us. We deserve it.
I know I made the joke that we were the H3 podcast earlier, guys, but come on.
Yep.
What are we, a bunch of Zionists? All right. The cleavage between town and country, as well as the development of this cleavage, formerly confined to one country only, are now being reproduced on a tremendously enlarged basis. Viewed from this standpoint, entire countries appear today as towns, namely the industrial countries, whereas entire agrarian territories appear to be the country. International divisions of labor coincides here with the division of labor between the two
Coincides.
largest branches of social production as a whole, between industry and agriculture, thus appearing as a so-called general division of labor. This can be clearly realized by comparing the localities where the products of industry and agriculture are produced. Wheat is mainly produced in Canada, L, in the agrarian sections of the United States, L, in Argentina, Australia, and Western India, in Russia, Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, Hungary, rye. Fuck. Do you see what I did? I
You
combined
skipped
those
that
sentences.
full period.
You're like, next, keep moving.
I was like,
Fuck
rye
that
is in the
period,
country. I was like, what is rye? All right. Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, Hungary. Period. Rye is produced mainly in Russia. Meat is delivered by Australia and New Zealand. The United States, agrarian sections, Canada, which specializes in large-scale production of meat, Argentina, Denmark, Holland, etc. This is the first piece, guys. Livestock is exported mainly from the agrarian countries of Europe into the industrial countries. The centers of European production of livestock are Hungary, Holland, Denmark, Spain, Portugal, Russia, and the Balkan countries. Timber is furnished by Sweden, Finland, Norway, northern Russia, partially by some sections of former Australia, Hungary. The export of timber from Canada has also begun to increase. I know it's kind of like a joke, like we're kind of laughing because of like how much he lists these things that might seem really obvious to us, but we have to remember, like now today we could look up, what's the climate of Sweden?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like average motherfuckers back in the day didn't know this stuff, so like
Some
you had
dude
to
back
be
in
told.
the day could read this and be like, "The fuck is Argentina?"
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Bro, be like, where the hell is that?
What even is that?
Right.
I don't know what it is, but I know wheat comes from there, man.
And I do like that. I like that a lot.
I do like bread. All right. If then we were to single out the countries that export manufactured goods, they would prove to be the most developed industry countries in the world. Cotton fabrics are primarily placed upon the market by Great Britain. Then follow Germany, France, Italy, Belgium, and Western Hemisphere, the United States. That was a whole L sentence right there. Woolen goods are produced for the world market by Great Britain, France, Germany, Australia, Belgium, etc. Iron and steel products are manufactured mainly by Great Britain, Germany, and the United States. The three countries that have attained the highest level of industrialism. The second place in this respect is occupied by a group consisting of Belgium, France, Austria, Hungary. Chemicals are produced by Germany, which is a respect occupies the first place. Then by England, the United States, France, Belgium, and Switzerland. We thus observe a peculiar distribution of the productive forces of world capitalism. The main subdivision of social labor is separated by the line that divides two types of countries. Social labor proves to be divided on an international scale. International division of labor finds its expression in the international exchange. Inasmuch as the producers do not come into social contact until they exchange their labor products, the specifically social character of their individual labor does not manifest itself until exchange takes place. In other words, the labor of individuals become an effective part of the aggregate of social labor solely in virtue of the relations which the process of exchange establishes between labor products, consequently between the producers. Basically, bro is saying there's a big fucking difference between industrial capitalism and agrarian capitalism. The ones that have the concentration of industrial capital are the top dogs. That's essentially what he says. The social labor of the world
the agricultural capital is really only exploited and used specifically for the purpose of being like the raw materials being provided to an industrial site, I guess, an enterprise in the the town. You know what I mean?
Mining the cobalt on its own does nothing. Sending it to the factory is what.
Yeah, you could. I mean, you could rub your hands with cobalt. It could be a cool rock. I don't know, but I mean,
shape it and like
you're not
make
gonna,
a cobalt ball.
There's nothing you can do with it without the industry behind it. So in that instance, in the inverse of what I was saying earlier, that industry of a raw material that is not for subsistence like wheat or something like that is completely dependent on manufacturing for it to be worth anything.
Right.
Yeah, dog. All right. The social labor of the world as a whole is divided among the various countries. The labor of every individual country becomes part of the world's social labor through the exchange that takes place on an international scale. The interdependence of countries brought about by the process of exchange is by no means an accident. It is a necessary condition for continued social growth. International exchange thereby turns into a process of socio-economic life governed by definite laws.
Yeah.
The socioeconomic life of the world would be entirely disorganized if America or Australia ceased exporting their wheat and livestock. England and Belgium their coal, Russia grain and raw materials, Germany its machines and the products of chemical industry, India, Egypt, and the United States cotton, etc. On the other hand, the countries that export the products of agriculture would be doomed to destruction, where the markets for those products suddenly closed. This is particularly evident as regards the so-called monoculture countries, i.e., such as produce one single product, coffee in Brazil, cotton in Egypt, etc. How indispensable international exchange is at present for the normal process of economic life may be seen from the following examples. During the first third of the 19th century, England imported only 2.5% of foodstuffs needed for its population. Now it imports about 50% of the grain, of wheat, even as much as 80%, 50% of its meat, 70% of its butter, 50% of its cheese, etc. So I actually want to bring up an example that's a little bit closer to modern day. So when I don't recall exactly what decade, but Cuba used to sell mostly produce sugar. That's what the plantation of the
Same with
plantation
Haiti.
in Cuba, they were there to produce sugar. So when Fidel and the gang won their revolution, they were mainly exporting sugar to Soviet Union because you can't really grow sugar in Russia. So they were able to immediately, make money, mutual beneficial for everybody. But it was the United States that embargoed the Cubans from having the ability to sell their sugar, and that severely impacted their economy, because now it goes back, even if you look at it from a liberal bourgeois economics class, now you have all this demand that you can't meet, and you just have all the sugar, that's all you make. Now you're going to see detrimental effects to your economy. Not only that, but now you take it to another level. In an example, what happens when one of these smaller agrarian countries don't want to sell a product to the United States? Now that becomes a problem. Or not even the United States, any imperialist power, but we're using the United States as an example. Not only is it detrimental to their economy, in the case if they're a mono culture, but if they are refusing to play on the economic stage. So we see that happen in particular with Venezuela. Venezuela's main economic source is crude oil, but Venezuela isn't always particularly interested in playing by the rules that the United States sets. Therefore, they are punished for it. Therefore, now they have a stagnated economy. I'm oversimplifying because they're unable to sell their products to one of the world's largest markets.
Right.
Yeah. And like the inverse would be the oil crisis, where suddenly the United States had to ration oil and gas because I forgot what their group. Bro, what are you doing?
What is going on here?
Oh, you can see my thing.
What are you doing?
I totally forgot. No, because I was thinking about this.
What are you doing,
bank, bro? And I was like, when are these bitches open? Because I gotta call.
Bro, exit out of it, bro. It's exit out of it, dude.
You can what? I'm not seeing it on
it's
my.
It's exit out of the tab, bro.
That's funny.
Jesus Christ!
Just goes in there, logged into your bank, and just hey everyone, here you go.
I just wanted to see the time.
Pornhub.com over here, bro. Jesus Christ!
Podcast.
Use your fucking phone, bro. Damn.
Oh my god.
That's crazy.
But I was gonna say, that's why, like, for instance, Europe wants the United States to get rid of the Cuban embargo, right? Mm-hmm. Because they can't tap those resources. They want to buy those resources from the Cubans.
But okay, anyway. So what I was saying is, that's what you saw with, the United States and the oil crisis, is that the oil producers were basically trying to get a higher price for their product. The United States was not willing to pay it, so the United States paid the price by not having the product that they required anymore. I think later on he talks about how industrialization ends up naturally outgrowing the capacity for extraction, and that results in it basically powers trying to open up new markets where it increases the amount of supplies of the product that they need for their manufacturing. And that's a pretty fundamental and huge part of imperialism is, basically forcefully cracking open markets so you can get more of, the good that you're trying to get for your manufacturing, because you can't produce it domestically, you can't produce it within your own market, and you can't produce it to the extent that you need in the periphery of your market. So you need to go to the periphery of your periphery and get more. And eventually that more is not there anymore. You know what I mean? It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to deindustrialize to a certain extent.
Deindustrialize and find new markets.
I.e. United States.
Yep.
Turn into a service economy.
According to Lex's calculations, the foreign market has for Belgian manufacturers significance equal to that of the home market in England. The home market hardly absorbs double the amount of manufactured goods, metals, and coal that is to be exported. In Germany, the home market exceeds the foreign market 4 to 4.5 times. According to Ballard, England imports between 3/4 and 4/5 of all necessary wheat and between 40 to 50% of its meat. Germany imports 24 to 30% of its breadstuffs, but has 60% of its fodder and 5 to 10% of its meats. The number of examples could be increased indefinitely. One thing is clear from the above. There's regular market connection between the process of exchange between numberless individual just thinking about doxing myself. Numbers individual economics scattered over the most. I mean, it's pretty obvious where I'm at, but thus World Division of Labor International Exchange presuppose the existence of a world market and world prices. The level of prices is generally speaking not determined by production costs, as to the case in local national production. To a very large extent, national and local differences are leveled out and in general result into the world prices, which in their turn exert pressure on individual producers, individual countries, individual territories. This is particularly manifest in the case of such commodities as coal and iron, wheat and cotton, coffee and wool, meat and sugar. The production of grains may serve as an example. Conditions of grain production differ widely in various countries, wherein the price deviations by no means as great. I ain't reading that figure.
Yeah, that's fine. How much more does this got? Because we're getting to the 45-minute mark and we got 3 more things to read. That's why I said this is long.
Yeah, which is good that we're breaking it up.
Yeah, unless we want to have 4 parts, maybe.
We might have a little series going on.
3 parts is okay by me, but
I'm okay with it. We might have to do a pre-recorded guest situation because we got something in the works. But we'll see.
We'll figure it out.
All right, let me read this paragraph.
Yeah,
this monstrosity, and then we'll go from there. I'm down with it, Cutie, because we've been doing a lot of current events. The example of the commodity market shows that behind the market relations are hidden production relations. Any connection between producers who meet in the process of exchange presupposes the individual labors of the producers having already become elements of the combined labor of a social whole. Thus, production is hidden behind exchange. Production relations are hidden behind exchange relations. The interrelation of producers is hidden behind the interrelations of commodities. Whereas connections established through the process of exchange are not of an accidental nature, we have a stable system of production relations which forms the economic structure of society. Thus, we may define world economy as a system of production relations and a corresponding of exchange relation. I'm running out of steam. Relations on a world scale. We must not assume, however, that production relations are established solely in the process of commodity exchange, wherein human beings work for one another in any way. Their labor acquires a social form. In other words, whatever the form of connection is established between producers, whether directly or indirectly, once connection has been established and has acquired a stable character, so we may speak of a system of production relations, i.e. the growth of the formation of a social economy. It thus appears that commodity exchange is one of the most primitive forms of expressing production relations. Present-day, highly complicated economic life known as a great variety of forms behind which production relations are hidden. When, for instance, the share of an American enterprise are bought by the Berlin Stock Exchange, production relations are thereby established between the German capitalist and the American worker. When a Russian citizen obtains a loan from London capitalist, pays interest on that loan, then this is what happens. Part of the surplus value expressing the relations that exist between the English worker and English capitalist is transferred to the municipal government of a Russian city. The latter, in paying interest, gives away part of the surplus value received by the bourgeois of that city and expresses the production relations existing between the Russian worker and the Russian capitalist. Thus, connections are established both between the worker and the capitalist of two countries. Of particular significance in this role of the ever-growing movement of money capital, which we have noted above, a number of other forms of economic relations may be observed, like immigration and migration of labor power. I'm surprised my dyslexia was able to do that sentence. Partial transfer of the wages of immigrant labor, sending money home. That's interesting. Establishment of enterprises abroad and the movement of these economic phenomena, which all in all are based on the relations between human beings engaged in the process of production. By and large, the whole process of the world economic life in modern times reduces itself to the production of surplus value and its distribution among the various groups and subgroups of the bourgeois on the basis of an ever-widening reproduction of the relations between the two classes. The class of the world proletariat on the one band and the world bourgeois on the other. All right, cutie, what the fuck was he saying?
I gotta look at it. I mean, he's just saying that the loans create a situation where capitalists are able to like collaborate and exploit each other while also now connecting their businesses through said loan, thereby connecting a extractive relationship between a capitalist that doesn't even own the business and the worker of the other business. Know what I mean? Yeah, I mean that's probably the easiest way of describing it without going for another 30 fucking minutes on this. Because just this section was long as hell.
For sure. Like I said, we're almost at an hour right now. Okay. What do you boys want to do? We can either keep making more parts, which I'm fine with, or we can do the next one as part of this whole episode.
You know what?
I mean, we got another hour. We could probably
Yeah.
finish this out and then
I've
get
got
to
time.
the other two, because the other two are relatively short. This one is just long as hell.
Should we ask
All right.
the audience?
Well, we only have like this little paragraph here, so we can finish it.
Yeah.
And then we'll jump to the next one. Okay.
Do they want to keep listening to us? Yeah. You know?
I mean,
Yeah, you should comment and ask us some questions.
Let's get some live interaction going on here in the group. Here we go.
I know you're watching. Talk to me.
Here, let's give them some motivation.
Why are you so mean, bro? I don't want to talk to you.
We gotta
What
know.
the hell's all that?
No.
You scared me, bro.
I'm trying to wake these motherfuckers up.
Bro, I heard it and I got like jump scared, bro. That's crazy.
I don't even understand dialectics, bro.
According to Lenin, not entirely.
Not enough.
He's not sure.
World economy is one of the species of social economy in general. By social economy, the science of political economy understands, first of all, a system of individual economies interlinked by exchange. From this point of view, it is perfectly obvious that a social economy by no means presupposes an economic subject guiding the totality of economic relations. What political economy has in mind here is not economy as planned, teleological entity. Conducting economic activities, but first of all, an unorganized system of economies devoid of a conscious collective management, where on the contrary, the economic laws are the elemental laws of the market and the production of subordinate to the market. This is why the term social economy in general, as well as the term world economy in particular, by no means requires regulation as an indispensable defining characteristic. Up to the present time, the national economic organism proved unable to exercise a general regulating influence on the international market, where anarchy continues to prevail, since this is the battleground of the national interest, i.e. the interest of national commanding class. Notwithstanding this fact, world economy remains the world economy.
Drink some water.
Pretty baller. I'm thirsty. But pretty much at the end there, he's basically saying like, you can't reform this shit. you can't just, we could do it a little better, guys.
Yeah, he's actually referring to Kautsky's ultra imperialism with this.
Ooh.
He talks a lot of shit about Kautsky in this, which is funny because Lenin looked through this and he did the introduction for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he read it right basically before anybody else. So part of me almost is like, maybe this dude was just like, Bukharin, bro, you gotta join me in on this hate train because I
He's like,
fucking
"Come on, man."
hate Kautsky. Because in the introduction, he's talking shit about Kautsky too. It's like,
bro, let's fucking roast this dude.
yeah.
All right. So we're on the next one. Here is Lumpy.
Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Hi, Lumpy.
Are you gonna do? All right, you're pulling it up, so I will just read, and you can do what you need to do.
Can
I
we
wanna
look
go
at
use the
the other
podcast.
imperialism one real quick?
All right.
The chapter 9.
The other,
Yeah,
yeah. Can you do a slow scroll here?
this one's not as long as chapter 1.
Okay, because I feel like this one might be more important to read first and then do economic policy. Not economic policy. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
economic
Yeah, it's
structure.
probably important to do that one and then economic structure.
All
Because
right, well,
economic structure is in, I guess, not response to this, but it's
all right, so that works for me. I'm gonna go use the little girl's room.
Oh.
All right, so I'm
All right,
reading
well,
chapter 9. Chapter 9, Imperialism as an historic category. In the preceding chapters, we undertook. All right, I was just thinking that Ivan's going to get back because he's going to have to scroll for everyone. But in the preceding chapters, we undertook to prove the imperialist policies arise only on a certain level of historic development. A number of contradictions of capitalism are here tied up into one knot, which is cut by the sword of war, only to be tied again more tightly the next moment. The policy of the ruling classes and their ideology inevitably arises from this stage of development, must therefore be characterized as a specific phenomena. Can I go? Okay. In the literature, just stop me when you need. In the literature that floods.
I'll hit you with the.
Yeah, you can just hit me. That's
Words.
fine. With the words. In the literature that floods the market at present, there prevail two distant theories of imperialism. One sees in the modern policy of conquest a struggle of races. The Slavs or the Teutonic races are supposed to strive for domination, and all virtues and vices are distributed among those races, according to the nationality of the author. Old and vulgar as this theory is, it persists with the tenacity of a prejudice, for it finds a very favorable soil in the growth of national self-consciousness among the ruling classes who are directly interested in utilizing the remnants of old psychological stratifications for the interest of the state organization of finance capital. A simple reference to facts shatters this theory, leaving not a single stone of the entire edifice. The Anglo-Saxons, of the same origins of the Germans,
Fucking Angloids. Go on. Sorry, I had to say it.
of course you do. The Angloids, of the same origin of the Germans, are their cruelest enemies. The Bulgarians and the Serbs, pure Slavs, speaking almost the same language, find themselves on different sides of the trenches. The Poles are recruiting among themselves ardent partisans. I can't even see you guys. Partisans of both Austrian and Russian orientation. The same is happening with the Ukrainians. One section of whom is in sympathy with the Russians, while another is in sympathy with the Austrians. On the other hand, every one of the belligerent coalitions combines the most heterogeneous races, nationalities, tribes. Looked at from a racial point of view, what is their common to the English, Italians, Russians, Spanish and the black savages of the French colonies, whom the glorious republic is driving to slaughter, just as the ancient Romans drove their colonial slaves. What is there common to the Germans and the Czechs, the Ukrainians and the Hungarians, the Bulgarians and the Turks, who proceed together against the coalition of the Entente? Entente,
I
right?
think it's on
Yeah,
time.
Entente.
It is perfectly obvious that not races but state organizations of definite groups of the bourgeoisie are conducting the struggle. It is also perfectly obvious that one or the other grouping of the great powers is determined not by a community of certain racial tasks, but by a community of capitalist. Did I do that right? Of capitalist aims at the given moment. This is why the Serbs and Bulgarians, who only recently fought together against Turkey, have now split into hostile camps. This is why England, formerly the enemy of Russia, that's still probably the enemy of Russia at that point, is now exercising hegemony over it. This is why Japan keeps step with the Russian bourgeoisie, although only 10 years ago, Japanese capital fought with arms in hand against Russian capital. From a purely scientific, not falsified point of view, the inadequacy of the theory is striking. Notwithstanding its obvious falsity, however, it is assiduously cultivated both in the press and in the universities for the sole reason that it promises no mean advantages for master capital. In justice, however, we must note that to the extent that the various races are being consolidated and united in the iron fist of the military state, there appears a less vulgar but no less untenable attempt to advance a territorial psychological theory. The place of the race is here taken by its substitute, the Middle European, American, or some other humanity. This theory is also far from the truth because it ignores the principal characteristics of modern society, its class structure, and because the class interests of the upper social strata are substituted for the so-called general interests of the whole. The second very widespread theory of imperialism defines it as the policy of conquest in general. From this point of view, one must speak with equal right of Alexander the Macedonians and the Spanish conquerors' imperialism of Carthage and Ivan the Third. Ivan, what did you do? Ivan the Third of ancient Rome in modern America, of Napoleon and Hindenburg. Simple as this theory may be, it is absolutely untrue. It is untrue because it explains everything, i.e., it explains absolutely nothing.
Pause.
Go ahead.
Other people
all
talk
that mean?
about this because we're,
What?
I'd say, about halfway through this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are our thoughts, gang? Squad, team, collective.
I do want to point out something because I feel like this is important here where people are getting lost in the sauce between the correct line and the padstock line. So when Bukharin's talking about these race relations and he says here, where is it? I lost it. But he basically says in here that what is happening is not like because of the races of these people themselves. It's because of the bourgeois institutions. What it means is, yes, race relations and cultural feuds are for sure inflamed by the bourgeois, but that does not mean that there isn't work to be undone by the proletariat to the proletariat.
Right.
That just because you can recognize that there is forces outside of the people involved in the culture, that it doesn't mean that you can't just like chalk it up. Well, the Biden is the reason why we're racist to each other. Therefore, we don't have to do intersectionality. So I just wanted to point it out.
Right. Some of these like relations and tensions exist. and existed before capitalism, but with the emergence of capitalism and the bourgeoisie, they are exacerbated to this extent that we see ourselves in today.
Yeah.
All right, you guys ready? Every policy of the ruling classes, pure policy, military policy, economic policy, has a perfectly defined functional significance. Growing out of the soil of a given system of production, it serves to reproduce given relations of production, either simply or on an enlarged scale. The policy of the feudal rulers strengthens and widens feudal production relations. The policy of trade capital increases the sphere of domination of trade capitalism. The policy of finance capitalism reproduces the production basis of finance capital on a wider scale. It is perfectly clear that the same thing can also be said about the war. War serves to reproduce definite relations of production. War of conquest serves to reproduce those relations on a wider scale. Simply to define war, however, is conquest is entirely insufficient, for the simple reason that in doing so we fail to indicate the main thing, namely what production relations are strengthened or extended by the war, what basis is widened by a given policy of conquest. Bourgeois science does not see and does not wish to see this. It does not understand that the basis for this classification of various policies must exist in the social economy out of which the policies arise. Moreover, it is inclined to overlook the vast differences existing between various periods of economic development. And just at the present time, when all the peculiarities of the historical economic process of our days are so striking to the eye, the Austrian and the Angloid American economic school, the least historical of all, has built its nest in bourgeois economics. Publicists and scholars attempt to paint modern imperialism as something akin to the policies of the heroes of antiquity with their imperium. This is the method. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Because I know Ivan wanted to talk about that particular section right there.
Huh? No. Yeah. So
I know you wanted to talk about this one spot.
No, I know. I was just being stupid. Yeah. So again, a lot of people, particularly on TikTok, on Twitter, they get really like fucked up by the sort of definition of imperialism. And I think a lot of that has to do with, as much as I like the book Imperialism, the Highest Stooge of Capital, I think a lot of y'all look at the title of books and then say you read them and you don't necessarily have a fundamental understanding of really what that means. So I'm just going to read the whole thing out again because I like it. But bourgeois science does not wish to see this. It does not understand that the basis for the classification of various policies must exist in the social economy out of which the policies arise. Moreover, it is inclined to overlook the vast differences existing between various periods of economic development. Just at the present time, when all the whatever of the historical economic process of our days are so striking to the eye, the Australian and the Anglo-American economic schools, the least historical of all, has built its nest in bourgeois economics. Publicists, scholars attempt to paint modern imperialism as something akin to the policies of the heroes of antiquity within their imperium. So basically, like when even back then, when this was written, and today, when people, the laymen, when they hear empire, they typically think of like Rome or Greek or antiquity, the people from ancient times. They don't have an understanding that empire exists today, but it is now existing in different forms. Now it is no longer required for in this case, the biggest empire in the world, the United States, to have while it does have troops and fighting capacity in most countries in the world, it doesn't need to do that so long as they have economic control over different regions of the world. So we were actually having a discussion about this yesterday in the Kollectiv Discord join, where someone was asking me about like basically why the United States continues to support Israel, and really what it has to do with, as a military outpost, that the United States maintains in the middle in West Asia, they are able to basically corner resources, particularly resources that are in Syria, and hold those resources essentially hostage. That is imperialism, because now the native people to those lands, in this case Syria, are unable to access their own resources that would be part of their own markets. Instead, it is the United States using proxies or compradors or what have you in order to extract those things and either have them just sit there and kind of be like dead capital, like we talked about in the last piece, or extract those resources for their own benefit. But in a lot of ways, when you think about antiquity and how empires were sort of established and ran back then, yeah, the social relations capitalism didn't exist. But if we can assert that if the technology was there, as QD was saying in our chat, if the Romans were able to have ships that could cross the Atlantic easily, then yeah, you would probably see something extremely similar, where, sort of how, like, I'm oversimplifying, how like Carthage became its own colony after the fact, or its own essentially like little own empire. You would basically see the
Yeah,
same
it was
that.
the major empire, and it was arguably their imperialism was very similar to today in that it created like basically trade outposts. Where like Rome did it a lot through military conquest and the enslavement of people. While Carthage did enslave a lot of people, they did it a lot through trade outposts and effectively creating the town where the manufacturing occurs. Antiquity's version of
Right.
manufacturing. They weren't making steel or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, so I just think that that's a good way to look at it, because when we going back to the seal example in the first piece versus where we're at now, when we're talking about the modern day imperialism, really, if you've been following along, you should start to see now where the lines are drawn between simply trade, simply participating in the world market, versus plain participating in imperialism, which we will get to when we talk about the modern imperial powers of the day in a few episodes from now. So go ahead, Lumps.
This is the method of bourgeois historians and economists. They gloss over the fundamental difference between the slave-holding systems of antiquity, with its embryo of trade, capital, and artisanship.
Artisanship.
I don't know why I can't say that. The modern capitalism. The aim in this case is quite clear. The futility of the ideas of labor democracy must be proven by placing it on a level with the lumpen proletariat, the workers, and the artisans of antiquity. From the purely scientific point of view, all such theories are highly erroneous. If a certain phase of development is to be theoretically understood, it must be understood with all its peculiarity. I don't like that word. Peculiarity. I'm not saying it. Is distinguishing.
Because you're from Boston.
Peculiarities.
Too many R's. It has one R.
Peculiarity.
Like, peculiarity. It's distinguishing trends, its specific characteristics, which is it shares with none. He who, like Colonel Torrance, sees in the Savages Club the beginning of capital, he who, like the Austrian School of Economics, defines capital as a means of production, which in essence is the same thing, will never be able to find his way among the tendencies of capitalist development and include them in one theoretical structure. The historian or economist who places under one denominator the structure of modern capitalism, i.e., modern production relations, and the numerous types of production relations that formerly led to wars of conquest, will understand nothing in the development of modern world economy. One must single out the specific elements which characterize our time and analyze them. This was Marx's method, and this is how the Marxists must approach the analysis of imperialism. We now understand that it is impossible to confine oneself to the analysis of the forms in which a policy manifests itself. For instance, one cannot be satisfied with defining a policy as that of conquest, expansion, violence, etc. One must analyze the basis on which it arises and which it serves to widen. We have defined imperialism as the policy of finance capital. Therewith, we uncover
Ding, 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 ding.
the functional
Yeah.
significance of the policy.
Pause. So when he's saying we have defined imperialism as the policy of finance capital, it sounds extremely vague if you haven't read all of this, and you should read all of this. But the policy, that he's referring to, the more specific, I guess, elaboration of imperialism is really talking about the process of trust creation, the process of, trust amalgamate, different trusts basically start merging into one thing, the monopolization of, countless forms of production from top to bottom, left to right, into these banking systems. So it's not just Rockefeller buying up all these different things. It's not just, Rockefeller purchasing the harpoon factory and purchasing where the the harpoons are used and getting shit from seals, right? I think it's blubber. It's blubber, right?
Blubber.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting blubber from seals, what it is Rockefeller now, or Jeff Bezos, using this as a method to basically create his own bank, his own place where he's financing different operations across the world, where now he can, use this in collaboration with a couple of other capitalists, put their money together, and essentially create, their own, like, I guess cabal. You know what I mean? Like, you can see it in, the huge buzzword, I guess, of BlackRock. You know what I mean? Where basically BlackRock has 17% of everything. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's imperialism. You know what I mean? And it's not even just when BlackRock has 17% of everything. It can get to the point where I think he was referring to the Morgan and Rockefeller banks, which were two opposing finance capitalist organizations, banking institutions. A bunch of shit just fell off my table. That's why I just paused and looked at it fall. But it's when imperialism is when banking is used on other countries for the purpose of extracting their raw materials for the benefit of the banker to I guess a very how do I say it, small extent. I mean, not elaborating to a huge amount, but I would definitely suggest reading the whole thing where you could really get him break it down step by step. Particularly when we talk about the economic policy. I always forget about what it's called, economic organization of Soviet Russia. We'll talk about that then. But he brings up state capitalism as not necessarily using the state using capitalism and using its banking institutions to profit off of industry. It's banking institutions and capital itself monopolizing the state. You know what I mean? It's not the state monopolizing capital or capitalism and factories. It's finance capital monopolizing and taking control of the state. And he talks about that with particularly the Morgan and Rockefeller banks, where it was basically almost every politician in the United States government was funded through one way or another, either the Rockefeller or Morgan Bank or one of their subsidiaries.
Yeah.
So that's imperialism. You know what I mean? When finance capital effectively takes control of a state's functions and uses the state's functions to carry out its will on other countries and other state capitalist organizations and firms and finance capitalists across the world for the purpose of their own profit.
Yeah.
So that's what he means by it's the policy of finance capital. The it requires a lot of extra elaboration, because if you just read it on face value, imperialism is the policy of finance capital. That's so vague, you could use it to basically call anything, imperialism, if you have a poor definition of what finance capitalism is or what imperialism is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Katie. Really, really good breakdown, because y'all gotta get on it when it comes to really having a fully developed understanding of what imperialism is. And I think if you get anything out of this entire yap session, it's when capitalists have taken over the state, not the state using capitalism, because it's a very parasitic relationship. You understand? The capitalists at the end of the day need the workers. They need the people to buy the shit. They need the state apparatus that is already there. So that's why you see so many of these corporations and stuff, especially in the United States, back, both so-called left, so-called right, and Democrat and Republicans, because it's the capitalists who have control over the United States, not the United States have control over the capitalists.
Right.
Yeah.
So that,
and by nature of basically finance capitalists of the United States taking over the governments of other countries, it doesn't make those other countries necessarily imperialist. What it makes is the United States is imperialist, exerting, its power through its finance capitalists over the other countries and integrating them into their markets.
to
Right.
sell more Funko Pops.
Yes.
Funko
To
Pop
sell the
based
seal
economy.
silver and the harpoons.
All right. I gotta stretch me bones. We're at the
It
good
upholds.
It's
good
like,
to
I
the end
can,
here.
it's like if you want, I can read the.
Do you want to just read the last? Well, it starts at it upholds the structure of finance capital, and then just get to the end of it, and then we can do the question of the week, and then we can be done.
Where am I
Or
starting?
do you want me? I can read the rest. I don't care.
If you want, go for it. I was offering a break.
It upholds the structure of finance capital. It subjugates the world to the domination of finance capital. In place of the old pre-capitalist or the old capitalist production relations, it put the production relations of finance capital. But just as finance capitalism, which must not be confused with money capital, for finance capital is characterized by being simultaneously banking and industrial capital, is a historically limited epoch confined only to the last few decades. So imperialism as the policy of finance capital is a specific historic category. Sorry. Imperialism is a policy of conquest, but not every policy of conquest is imperialism. Finance capital cannot pursue any other policy. This is why when we speak of imperialism as the policy of finance capital, its conquest character is self-understood. At the same time, however, we point out that production relations are being reproduced by this policy of conquest. Moreover, this definition also includes a whole series of other historic trends and characteristics. Indeed, we speak of finance capital, we imply highly developed economic organisms and consequently a certain scope and intensity of world relations. In a word, we imply the existence of a developed world economy by the same. Sorry, my cat's sneezing.
I was gonna say.
What is happening?
I think he got something in his nose.
Poor baby.
We imply the existence of the developed world economy. By the same token, we imply a certain state of production relations, of organizational forms of the economic life, a certain interrelation of classes, and also a certain future of economic relations, etc., etc. Even the form of the means of struggle, the organization of state power, the military technique, etc., are taken to be a more or less definite entity, whereas the formula policy of conquest is good for pirates, for caravan trade, and also for imperialism. In other words, the formula policy of conquest defines nothing, whereas the formula policy of conquest of finance capital characterizes imperialism as a definite historical entity. From the fact that the epic of, am I putting you to sleep? Someone yawn. From the
I'm
fact
always sleeping.
That's just an Ivan thing.
From the fact that the epic of finance capitalism is a historically limited phenomena, it does not follow, of course, that it has stepped into the light of day like Deus ex machina.
Deus ex
Deus,
machina.
yeah. Yeah. Deus ex machina. I can't like
Boss.
in
No, you're good.
In reality, it is a historic continuation of the epic of industrial capitalism, just as the latter was a continuation of the phase of commercial capitalism. This is why the fundamental contradictions of capitalism, which in the course of its development are continually being reproduced on a wider scale, find their sharpest expressions in their own epic. The same is true of the anarchic structure of capitalism, which finds its expression in competition. The anarchic character of capitalist society is expressed in the fact that social economy is not an organized collective body guided by a single will, but a system of economies interconnected through exchange, each of which produces at its own risk, never being in a position to adapt itself more or less to the volume of social demand and to the production carried out in other individual economies. This calls forth a struggle of the economies against each other, a war of capitalist competition. The forms of this competition can be widely different. The imperialist policy, in particular, is one of the forms of the competitive struggle. In the following chapter, we intend to analyze it as a case of capitalist competition, namely competition in the epic of finance capital.
Wow.
Okay.
Yay.
We
right,
did it, and with
give us
30
some-
minutes to spare.
At 3, we got to do question of the week.
Yep.
You guys ready?
Next week. No, we can get question of the week.
Okay.
Question of the week.
Let's
If
do it
you
after-
want to
yeah.
be featured on the Kollectiv podcast, go ahead and follow the Kollectiv TikTok and participate in our weekly question of the week.
Okay, so this was what is chauvinism is the question, but here is first. There was one answer underneath it. Good question. Chauvinism is essentially prioritizing a minority personal position over interests of working class as a whole. Social chauvinism is chauvinism with a false socialist pretense. Though thinking about this more, this definition might need to not detail. It's also dependent on an oppressor-oppressed relationship. So that was Whoopsie from TikTok. And then I'm just gonna play.
I think the second part definitely helps the answer.
Yeah.
The minority / personal position could be misconstrued very, very easily.
Yeah.
So I like that they sort of corrected themselves in the second part.
And clarified what they meant.
Yeah.
All right. So this second one is in video form, and as we said, this is what does it go by? Faded Age or something like that? Faded Age. Sorry.
You're like, we don't know.
Well, I don't know. Just follow it. No,
using your shit. Right.
He's being suppressed. So just go and
The forces of finance capital are keeping him from getting views. So you should go watch the whole video because we're only going to be showing about 2 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talk about chauvinism. What is it that they
There's
mean?
Lair Bear.
What is chauvinism?
Chauvinism is my favorite topic, so I'd like to talk a little bit about it here. And this is essential for anybody who is deconstructing, for you to understand what it is that you're deconstructing, because ultimately it's chauvinism. So here's what chauvinism is. chauvinism is a rabid ideology. It's the result of any immaterial ideology attempting to materialize itself. Because ideology isn't real, it has to attempt to force material reality to obey. Most of nature can't really defend itself against this force or speak about it, but its reaction can still be observed by the blowback. Most other humans are also a part of, but other humans are also a part of this nature and can defend themselves and speak out and have the ability to assess material reality. So we see the effects of chauvinism and how attempts to establish ideology over material reality are contradictory and ultimately result in the poverty of ideology. Chauvinism's chief ally is the ignorance of material reality, the natural or manufactured obscured lens from not being privy to the factors that are actually at play, instead only being given ideological answers. So they substitute what's actually there because they don't actually know what's there. They're able to be given answers that aren't real, that just fit, right? So ideological answers, because they're not based in reality, cannot have a material answer. All discussions around ideology can only end in a brute disagreement, unless ideology can be rejected for materialism. So when we're talking about tribalism, team sports, there's no clear answer there. It's just whichever you like. This is why chauvinism is a tool of the ruling class. It replaces material reality and puts essentially pseudoscience in its place that has no root. And if you can get people arguing over subjects with no solution, you perpetuate those conditions.
Okay. So is that enough?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that's a good,
again,
that's a good
people,
point.
it's faded age, so faded_age with 2 A's. So definitely go and watch the whole thing.
I'll put it in the description too.
Yeah, it's a very good video. It's a full 10 minutes, but so go watch it.
And if you want to be included on the collective question of the week, it doesn't even have to be a correct answer. We're pretty open to whatever. We don't necessarily pick the most correct. We just kind of pick the best answer, or at least the most interesting. So go ahead. Whether you're a baby leftist or you think you know what you're talking about, like we do, we definitely don't. Then that is, go ahead and do that. Or if you
want to see yourself in the podcast, if you want to see yourself featured, we're not going to tell you when it happens. So you're just going to have to watch the whole thing.
You can be like,
we're going to do the question of the week at random points. Maybe it's the beginning, maybe it's the end, maybe it's in the middle. I don't know.
Maybe next time
I was going to say to Larry's
somebody's reading
point,
something, you just bring it up.
Larry
it's just in the
wants
middle.
to see wrong answers all the time because that's how we learn.
The top of the hour question of the week break. Know what I mean?
What are we, Hassan?
I know, that's what I'm saying, bro.
One day. I feel like he'd come on as a guest. I think he'd be like, "Oh, look at these little goobers."
He'd probably
it'll be like it'll be 2 years from now. Not quite yet, man. Not yet.
One can dream.
He'll make fun of us.
I mean, to be honest, by the time, brother, we would be big enough for him to come on here. I don't know, man. There might be something that happens. I don't know. There might be some beef that materializes out of nowhere.
I would be pretty surprised considering all our ops are crackers, but
yeah, that's true. That's true.
I don't think there's a single one who's not at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they really are all.
I was gonna say we've
Englands.
never had one that wasn't. We've never had one that wasn't.
Yeah. All right.
I am our stalwart defender. But go on.
This is interesting. Little comment here. I'll definitely ask you a little bit more about that after the show, buddy. But anyway, if you want to catch we're gonna do another more Bukharin readings next week in preparation for our sort of greater discussion, like I said, on the inner imperialist powers on China. So you goofy goobers can all be on the same page. But anyway, thanks for tuning in.
We got one more of these. All right.
Oh, are we doing another one? What?
I thought we got time for one more. We got time for the Enterprises one.
Yeah, there's one that's pretty short, but no, we can hold it till next week because then we'll have
the squad's choice here. We can add some extra stuff in.
It's up to the squad. Yours looks
Yeah,
conflicted.
let's do it. Let's
I
do
am
it
very
next week.
conflicted.
We can add some extra stuff.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. All right, we
I
didn't even go over the
hesitated,
book
therefore
stuff, but,
next
we'll
week.
just do it next week.
Part 1, what is imperialism? Part 2, can a socialist country be imperialist? Part 3, is China imperialist? How's that sound?
That's
Yeah.
gonna go crazy, bro. All
Oh,
right.
and by the way, what we read today was 2 chapters from the same book. Just so everyone knows,
Yeah.
it's chapter.
We read the
1.
first and the 9th chapter, and there's 14
There's a lot of in between.
chapters. So
There's at least 7 chapters in between.
At least.
All the in between is going to explain exactly what that
What you
quote
don't
unquote policy of imperialism actually fucking means.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.